Hello everyone, I think we're good to start. And other people will join us a bit later. Our plan is that we will finish on time, despite the fact that we started a bit late. My name is Alisa Zaluska. I am consortium director at Bloom program, which works in frontline areas. We pay a lot of attention to social entrepreneurship, and this year we plan to launch a standalone grant program for social impact enterprises. So please watch our updates. It's just a useful information. And on Monday it will be already available online. Our session will be focused on private-public partnerships. We had a chance to talk with our speaker. So before we started, we have very different opinions, and hopefully today we will hear the truth, optimistic truth, so to say. And let me introduce you our today's speaker, Boris Shestopalov, agri-food entrepreneur, co-founder of HD Group and GFS Group. Then we have Alina Tokmalenko, community development expert and MetaLab. Alexander Wachowski, coordinator of Plech Coherent Community, and Alexander Tebe, founder and CEO of Crowd Ukraine Invest AG. Actually, as usual, we have some questions, but I really would like to have some interactive conversation, so we can really discuss relevant matters and think about some examples, maybe the inception stage in Ukraine, but more developed in Sweden, just to make sure that our today's discussion gives us hope and practical mechanisms that can be applied. So, Boris, let's start with you. What do you think? I'm not going to ask you this predefined question about roles, but I will give you some freedom. What do you think about public-private partnerships in Ukraine in general? Your optimistic view. Of course, it's optimistic. I'm always optimistic. For the last 5 years, I have repeatedly said that during the war, Ukrainian businesses are really united by recklessness and courage. So we're always optimistic. Public-private partnership, I believe, well, it's really amazing, and it's a positive mechanism. It's gonna be amazing when it's properly deployed. It will bring together government, communities, and businesses, provided that all parties of this agreement are really predictable. Because such conglomerates are needed when we talk about pretty big, complex things, or when we have long time for implementation. If it's just about supplier and client, or principal and contractors, goods and services, probably it would be a good example of private-public partnership. But if we have something pretty complicated, for example, Sweden has a huge experience in development of social housing. A lot of housing is held by Swedish communities, and my mother is living there right now. But these are businesses for decades to come, because very long return period. And it's clear that if you have a service contract with the government or with a community enterprise in Sweden, basically means that you will be able to raise long-term and cheap funding. In Ukraine, it's quite the opposite. If I bring in a contract with the government or with a community-owned enterprise, the bank will interpret it as a high-risk contract and will definitely insist on higher collateral or guarantee for such loan. So you see absolutely different approaches to the same issue. It can be a really positive tool for business projects and for impact projects, where there is a certain impact on the territory or where the project aims to address various issues. At the same time, it should rely on the primary capital, which is lacking basically in also Ukrainian social clusters, especially when it's about relations between government, businesses and society, government and personality. The key thing here is trust. Trust is what we're lacking, it's what we need the most. Because only trust and predictability may become a foundation of such cooperation. And the next steps, of course, is to develop transparent regulatory framework where all documents are internally consistent, where to avoid the situation where state property fund has its own vision, state tax service has its own vision, while law enforcement agencies are always have you under the magnifying glass when government and businesses decide to do something together. So until we have a unified, harmonized vision and transparent rules of the game, this amazing and powerful tool will be really slow in the country. Thank you. Thank you so much for focusing on trust and long-term planning. Because, well, we don't have it yet, but we need to prepare, which means that we need to really work together. Alina, my next question is for you. Maybe you have some experience. Maybe some such collaborations in form of public-private partnership, at least at the inception stage, and you can share it with us. Well, hello everyone, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to join you today. My name is Alina Takmulenko. Currently, I work at two projects with this inception of this beautiful term, public-private partnership between NGO sector, government and businesses. Now we have project possible where we pilot social impact funding in Voznesensk, and it's a clear example of partnership with this community, where community not just supports a project or mostly does not interfere with implementation of this project in a certain area, but where the community also assumes certain financial obligations under this project, including distribution of responsibility. Because how just a regular support, project support, is different from private-public partnership. It means that we have some joint obligations, and this is a key difference between projects we, let's say, implement in Voznesensk. Because if you take a look at the set of challenges, where Ukrainian legislation it prevents the social impact bonds in Ukraine, and that we need to adapt this model, use very peculiar ways and solutions. Somewhere we do it wrong, but we're trying to implement it in Ukraine, and this is a project we're going to pilot this year. Well, I have also a different example at another organization. It's MetaLab NGO, and right now we're doing a very important project called Kohati. We build housing in Ukraine for people who lost it during full-scale war, and we also piloting the social housing project. And here it's not about private partnership, it's just example of a partnership with a community. The community has no financial obligation. It does not distribute the responsibility, but still it provides really active support. The last project was implemented in Kalush. It's a small town in Ivano-Frankivsk region, and we have fantastic support at the mayor's level. They understand why this project is needed, and believe me, Without this partnership, between NGO, mayor's office, and businesses who proactively support it, we would never be able to implement it. So it's another clear reminder that people work with people, and human factor really matters to achieve the success of the project. Thank you, Alexander. What about your experience in Kiev region? Well, currently we don't work in Kiev region, but I'm here in 3 different capacities. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm advisor to the Minister of Communities and Development. I'm a coordinator of expert group responsible for implementation of the law on transformation of community-owned enterprises, and I'm a coordinator of Bleach National Project. How these 3 roles are connected? Let me explain it. First of all, let's start with regulatory framework. Yes, indeed, before last year we had a law on public-private partnership, which basically did not work. Over 22 years, I think around 200 projects were initiated, and the implementation rate is less than 10%. So this law did not work. Well, it's not a unique case of public-private partnership. It happens, right? Yes, exactly. But last year, with the support of an expert group at our ministry, we developed a draft law which was supported in summer, passed in summer, and then it has become effective. It's a law 4510, which is about private-public partnership. And it has really changed a lot in this area. First of all, the range expanded. Initially we talked about public sector actors. Now we talk about any public law entities, communities. So now we basically go down to the community level. It can be community-owned enterprises, regional councils that basically manage the common property of several communities, and what else? Now we have another element. We have another important stakeholder, it's donor, and now we have this model where there is a private partner, public partner, and a donor as a potential source of funding. And here in this model, we have a lot of space for implementing various projects at the community level, including impact projects. Next, if we talk about one of the public law entities, which is community-owned enterprises, then, well, given the fact that since recently we had a model where community directly impacted the management of community-owned enterprises, it was pretty difficult to talk about any engagement, any fundraising, and any project implementation. But now things have changed. Law 4196 was adopted. It's a law on transformation of public-owned, state-owned enterprises and community-owned enterprises. By the way, here we're really supported by Polaris, a Swedish project, which funds the work of our expert group at the ministry. And so what are some of the changes? Now community enterprises are about to be transformed into joint stock companies and limited liability companies.
Майна і створенням наглядових.
The assets will be revalued and supervisory boards will be introduced. So corporate governance, right? Yes, basically corporatization of community-owned enterprises. And here we have a lot of potential for fundraising and project implementation. It's a second essential aspect. Then it's Plecho community project. It's probably the largest national impact project which is implemented in Ukraine right now. Since the start of this project, we have engaged over 1,100 communities. Right now, we're implementing over 400 projects, and the total amount of funding over 300 million hryvnias. So, what this project is about? We have 10 frontline areas so-called transit communities, while the rest of the regions are considered rear-end communities. So we build horizontal connections in 3 key areas: social and cultural, humanitarian, and recovery. The intensity may vary depending on the region, but still we have over 400 projects that are at the implementation stage. And honestly, in 2022, when you reach some critical level, and we got a project about, we are first focused on quantity, now we also focus on quality. And our donors such as the World Bank, UNDP, they see our infrastructural model and they ask us questions. Well, they see how to integrate their projects, for example, World Bank has a project about social services outsourcing. They see our structure model and say, well, it's perfect for us. Let's bring together our efforts. So, as part of Plечо-Plечь project, we are now examining the area where we can be useful for each other with our international partners, where we can cooperate. And well, we know that some communities may be institutionally weak due to the lack of funding and lack of institutional capacity, especially in the frontline regions. Well, honestly, they may have just 5 to 6 people in the management, so come on, project offices, what are we talking about? On the other hand, many of our communities are facing the same issues. Now we try to combine them into cluster, and this cluster model is going to be much more interesting, including for our international donors. Because clusters have needs, rear communities have capacity, we also have international donors, and it's ready to use implementation model. Really interesting. I'm sorry I have to interrupt you because of 2 reasons. First of all, we have a red alarm, so if you wish, you can proceed to the shelter. Don't hesitate to do it. We will watch the process, and if we receive instructions from our organizers, we will do it. But still, if you don't feel comfortable and you wish to go to the shelter, please feel free to do it. Thank you so much, Alexander. We will give you floor. It's really important for us to give floor for everyone. So, Alexander, you can tell us about the experience which is already working. And it's really important for us to have this North Star, the guidance, where we go and what can we change right now in Ukraine in order to develop this format of cooperation, reach the level similar to Sweden. What's your idea?
Actually, first of all, thank you for this very lovely transformation. Well, now I hear myself double. Does it work? Like this. Thank you for the translation. Actually, I'm not here in the capacity of a German government official, because I'm not. I'm just a German private person. But I can give you a little bit of content, because we are located in the city center of Berlin. And we are very much together with my colleague Irina, with my colleague Olga, at every German government participation that there is, whether it's the German Chamber of Commerce, the German Eastern Association, the Plattform Wiederaufbau. I see my good friend Martin Vogelsang here, and also Volker Weber back there from Germany. And what I can give you is a bit of perspective of how Germany looks at this. Because we are now in the 5th year of this war. And I was here last Sunday. And it was just unbelievable for all of us, and also unbelievable for me. In Germany, the perception of Ukraine is changing. And in the first year of the full-scale invasion, German people donated more than 1 billion euros in cash as donations, grants, free money. And it was at the record high. And the support level from German people towards Ukraine was above 80%. Now, 5 years later, everyone in Ukraine is tired of this war, and Ukrainians are suffering from this war, and I would never, ever compare German suffering to what you have in Ukraine. But the support level of German people for an EU accession of Ukraine is 45%. It's at a record low, even though everybody knows you are suffering the most. And this is one of the issues. We are talking about impact. Impact goes with funding. Funding goes with money, needs to go from somewhere. When today you hear our German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, talk about Ukraine, he's very, very cautious. He is super supportive of Ukraine, but he's very, very cautious because he knows it's unpopular. And what there is, I was a speaker last year at the German-Ukrainian Economic Conference in Berlin, where Zelensky was talking, Merz was talking, and I had the stage for like 8 minutes for myself. And what I said is like, many people in Germany see Ukraine as a threat in terms of it will cost us a lot of money, and not many people see Ukraine as an opportunity. And we are in this bubble in Berlin, which is maybe, I don't know, 1,000 people. And all of them love Ukraine, support Ukraine to the max. But there are 80 million in Germany. What about the rest? And there's always like sayings, we have to support Ukraine. We have to talk about impact in Ukraine. In my view, it's not the right story. Because at some point, people are not willing to give more. And you have to frame Ukraine not as a donation place, a grant place, but as a place of opportunity. Unfortunately, I do not speak Ukrainian, but I learned the two most important Ukrainian words for me. Ukraina, країна можливостей.
Thank you for this. Дякуємо.
And this is like the framing that I want to present. We are definitely an impact company, but we are a private company. We are a German stock company. We have to be profitable. We cannot rely on grants. We cannot rely on donations. And still, everyone we talk to says, oh, when I invest into you, the money is lost. I say like, are you crazy? Why would the money be lost? Ukraine is the biggest opportunity for Germany, for all of the European Union we can have. We are 45 million people. Ukraine is 30 million. And they are knocking on our doors as consumers, production partners, business partners. And of course, it does have impact. It's my last sentence. It does have impact. But I want to frame it not as free money, but as a country of opportunity.
Thank you very much. I will tell you in English. And thank you for mentioning that we are partners. I believe that this is the most like a critical. Я перекладу для всіх, що
I will just translate for everyone that I am grateful for Alexander for highlighting that we are partners here and we can be partners. And I really hope that in the context of public and private partnership, we will be able to talk about intergovernmental projects, where we have partners among international companies, foreign companies, while Ukrainian communities or municipalities may also participate in such programs.
розширили насправді рамку, але
So we're gradually expanding this frame. And now let's talk a little bit about challenges and barriers. We already mentioned it, but now let's try to be more focused. What are practical barriers, practical issues? Yes, we can work on trust, but maybe there is something else where we can help communities. Maybe some other things we may change. So what are some of the very practical steps? What can we do as donors, as businesses, as NGOs? What can we change? Boris, please. Well, we already mentioned some imperfections in our legislation. But there is another important point. We mentioned it even today. When we create any kind of partnership, business, private, public partnership, partnership with public institutions or partnerships with community-owned enterprises and communities, we often forget the meaning of the word partnership. Partnership is joint responsibility. We have already discussed. It's proper, it's about proper contributions. But it's really important to understand that it's also about fair distribution of risks. Any partnership always includes a certain level of risk, especially during the war. The facility your building may be hit, and you need to be aware of it. So, in this sense, I have seen a lot of potential projects or joint agreements where government or communities don't even potentially consider assuming any risks, but these risks must be shared. Yes, proportional to the contributions, proportional to the participation of parties, but it's about understanding risks, managing risks, joint risk management. Yeah, we have a military risk insurance model. It's far from perfect, but it's a good starting point. There's supposed to be some kind of risk distribution. Once again, let me get back to what I mentioned at the beginning. Such partnerships are always long-term. So we just have to admit that only few communities, I'm not going to list them right now, but we have experience of talking to them, have fostered sufficient project management culture. Project office is pretty rare. There are only few communities that have it, but you need to know how to deal with donor money, how to deal with partners. There are a lot of legal aspects, implementation aspects, what we call execution, because any idea will never see the reality unless you properly implement it. So very important tool is to foster this business cooperation culture, including at communities willing to engage partners from among businesses. Because, well, we talk a lot about recovery projects, various recovery initiatives. Well, most likely, the most attractive and successful model will be a model which includes donor. Most often it's going to be some foreign actor, local businesses that have enough capacity and know how to fine-tune workflows, and community or state-owned enterprise willing to join this project. Here we talk not just about regular privatization. For example, I'm a businessman. I'm a serial businessman, that's how I call myself, but I have a very peculiar approach to privatization. On the one hand, it's a good process, it's supposed to progress, while on the other hand, you need to understand from what local communities would benefit most. Sell this land plot, sell this real estate, or create a joint project. Because, it's not just about selling things and using money. It's about building. It's about building long-term business processes, or local small endowments, where we can rely not just on selling, investing, and returning, but getting, investing, and then profiting in long term. It's an amazing aspect you've just mentioned, but I really want us to cover these things, and I want to basically summarize your key ideas that we need to build capacity of those. Yes, just a few more words, and then I will give floor to everyone. There's another really important thing. Communities must learn how to generate their own permanent funding sources and be independent of subventions and taxes, basically become a part of commercial agreements. Because when they're starting to accumulate these assets and capitals, they may issue regional bonds secured by this capital. And then they will have this infinite movement for money recovery. But there is a big problem. Constant electoral processes. We don't have constant electoral cycles. We don't have institutional memories. So, any long-term contract right now must have some kind of safeguards because it's always linked to the person who's responsible for it on behalf of government, and these people are always limited by the term of office, by elections. And so now we try to develop some documents to protect foreign investors. And I would say that we really have to start with a realistic framework to protect Ukrainian investors. Because, well, if you terminate some contract or you're pressured by various public authorities, you need personalization. You need a specific contact person, investigator, prosecutor, tax guy. You need a specific personality, personal tax liability for damages and losses. You know, that's how it works in our businesses. We have a company and we have beneficiary or a person who is signing document who bears ultimate responsibility. It must work vice versa as well. So in addition to trust, and trust is amazing, also a metaphysical component, we also need to build financial responsibility framework.
Все вірно.
You're absolutely right, but I would like to bring us back to the topic. Of course, we are not in the position to address all problems at the same time. I'm sure that we'll have to meet again, and we will invite the representatives of public authorities that may affect the legislative changes and implementation. But let's get back to the social issues that can be addressed by means of PPP. Alexander has already said that the respective legislation has already been amended. This means that the changes have already started and we are on the right track. Of course, the situation is everywhere different in the frontline territories, in the rear, and so on. But once again, there are practical examples. There are real cases of addressing certain problems. Alina, I know that your situation is in Voznesensk is very complicated, especially with the local authorities that represent the public part of your partnership. But still, you managed to cope with those problems, although it was a long-lasting process. Please share how did you cope and how can we use your experience? As Boris has said, the public partners are not yet ready for such projects. So how can we overcome this resistance? I would like to urge everyone, including the donors, to pay attention to this factor. Because there will be lots of the projects within the recovery. Everyone is looking forward to, but someone will have to implement this project, especially on the part of the public partners. Well, I'll be very brief. Look, what is especially important? It's important to hear other parties' opinion. When lawyers consult businesses, they usually propose 3 or 4 scenarios for addressing some problem. And this is the same. This is the case when we deal with the authorities. We work very closely with them when we are going to have PPP. We have to understand from the very beginning what the risks and the safeguards are. It's not just that we come and demonstrate our interest. No, we have to understand them. We have to understand their position, why they cannot invest their time and resources and operational capacity in this partnership. Therefore, it is crucial to analyze the situation and to do the homework. It took us more than 6 months before we signed the agreement with Voznesensk authorities. Under this agreement, we have different obligations, social obligations, financial obligations, and so on. So it's really important to hear the other party and to understand what prevents the second party from implementing this or that model. Then social impact projects cannot be implemented in Ukraine in the primary sense of social impact projects. We need perhaps some provisional models. Maybe somebody will say that it means compromises. No, but I'll say we need some adaptation. We need to invent some Ukrainian model which will serve us in our reality. So our own models have to be developed. Yes, we have to look around, we have to analyze the global cases, but we need to create our own model. And number 3, please don't think that local people are not as smart as you when you start working with the community. According to my analysis, the local initiatives are much more stronger from the point of view of impact. And I'm talking now not about quantitative, but rather qualitative indicators, because they do not face the challenge of resources. If you analyze the grant programs, you will see that there are not so many applicants, not so many participants. Small grant programs and even big grant programs by the World Bank feel this deficit of applicants. Maybe it's the issue of distrust. And when we work with the community, it is important to invest efforts in explaining them how these models work. So, what do we need? To communicate, to cooperate, to collaborate with local players. Let's say our project in Voznesensk. We have the local coordinator, the local focal point, and this coordinator is our representative. Unless we had this person, we would not be able to implement anything. So it's really essential to have a local representative, a local focal point who has deep understanding of organizations, of challenges, and the needs. That's it. Thank you very much. And now let me remind everyone that in Mercy Corps, we always evaluate the capacity of the local partners, and we always have programs aimed at enhancing the capacity in this or that area. The projects involving donor organizations or even big business can be helpful in this respect. Thus, communities will gain on capacity and they will be able to implement long-term projects, as Boris has said. We have changes. We know that many positions in the authorities are dependent on the electoral process, but anyway, the community can monitor and control the process of implementation. This is a very comprehensive process. Why am I emphasizing the practical mechanisms? Because I would like the participants to work with the communities with a clear understanding of practical recommendations that we can provide. So, Alexandra, please be so kind and give us your recommendations based on your experience. Well, I am not going to reiterate the previous recommendations, but I'd rather focus on the frontline communities. The main problem is the people. People mean the capacity of the communities. The initiatives may be really brilliant, but if there are no people to implement, the efforts will be spent in vain. So we would like our safer communities to be able to outsource any increase of capacity in the frontline communities will be beneficial for the community, for the beneficiaries, for the donors as well. Everyone is expecting that there will be a ceasefire, the hostilities will be over, and then there will be immediately an order to implement something. But there are no people to implement in these frontline communities. And another issue is the youth. We need some horizons for youth. If young people see some perspectives, they are willing to stay or to come to some communities. So people are resources, and people are a determinant factor for the future of the community. From the point of view of funding, I would say yes, it's difficult to engage funding for communities. However, on the other hand, this is not an extremely painful issue because we are looking forward to opening of the clusters, negotiation clusters. And as soon as negotiations start, we'll have access to the structural fund of the EU. Are we ready for using the structural funds? Well, this is the question number one. Whether we are in the position to use the resources. And question number two is whether we have the resources. But there is enough funding within the European structural funds. And then the legislation can be amended very soon about the emission of the local bonds. In the US, for instance, 12% of GDP are circulating within the bonds. But in our situation, the percentage, the share of the bonds is really small. So the communities will have access to funding, and then there will be perhaps local loans. Our banks are seemingly ready to provide such funding. However, there are certain problems our municipalities are currently facing with, because the municipalities can take the loans on the basis of certain conditions, and upon the bank screening, it turns out that the funding is not available for the communities. So capacity and financial resources are really important factor. Yes, you have mentioned young people, but I would also emphasize the importance of the older generation. Under our current circumstances, we should engage everyone. We should include everyone we can in the activities. And I have such a project, for instance, but today we're talking about addressing social problems via PPP. You have already mentioned the financial tools, so of course it's a very broad topic. However, there are some communities that demonstrate a certain level of success, and they can share their success stories and their expertise. In Kharkiv Oblast, for instance, I know there are communities that are going to undergo training on fundraising or engaging funding. I would be very cautious about the sufficiency of resources. Yes, maybe there is no scarcity, but the resources should be used with great caution and great efficiency. So the objective of those who use the resources or plan to use the resources is to focus on the efficiency. The accountability, the reporting, monitoring, and evaluation should be the priority. Because as a result, the trust of foreign partners will be formed. Alexander, you know Ukraine from inside. You know this social entrepreneurship ecosystem. You know all the players engaged. And you believe that we have a high potential of cooperating with Germany or other countries. What practical recommendations would you offer to Ukrainian players regarding initiation of partnerships, regarding the platforms for conversation? What platforms are available now? What platforms should be created?
Answer now. Actually, I just said in my initial statement that I regard Ukraine as a country of opportunities. But obviously, in order to be the country of opportunities, Ukraine has to present opportunities. And I tell you, two of the issues. Obviously, I've been to Ukraine 16 times in my life. I've spent more than 1 year in Kiev, and I like this country very, very much. So I know what to say, obviously, in order to also get applause. But maybe there is also sometimes a little bit of salt that you shouldn't close your eyes off. And a little bit of this salt is, I think Ukraine has an immense opportunity because you will be part of the European Union. You are part of Europe, and between other wars in this world, you have this little opportunity or like advantage that you are close to Europe and you will be. Now, one of the things, looking at Germany, and I now know the German news and society, the German politicians are doing everything to raise private capital for the rebuilding of Ukraine. Because the budget, the governmental budget, the European Union budget, it will be limited. And the amount of free money, wherever it's coming from, donations is already more or less over. Of course, they're like corporate Stiftung, like Bosch and stuff, and they have deep pockets. But at some point, the amount of free money, whether state, private, corporate, whatsoever, will be over. So Ukraine needs private capital. And now, time-wise, it's not in the hands of anybody in this room when the war will stop. But it's in the hands, especially of the Ukrainians, how quick the rebuilding will go. And what do I mean by this? If this is something that will take a very, very long time, Ukraine will have a problem. Number one, it will have a problem because the 6 million people, Ukrainians that have left the country, they will at some point have settled. I think right now the rate of potential returning Ukrainians is like 50%. But the longer the rebuilding takes on, the more people will have settled outside. And I can say, for example, I'm always happy to stay in Airbnbs, but I always stay in some kind of Khrushchevka Airbnbs. And once you are used to a lifestyle outside, you don't come to Ukraine. So the rebuilding has to go fast. One thing. Western expats, I have thick skin, I'm used to it, I can do it. Most Western expats will not live in these Khrushchevkas. You have to rebuild fast. And now comes the point, if this country is a country of opportunities, it's the obligation of the Ukrainians to present the opportunities. And one thing which is like difficult for me also is asking for too much. I totally agree. Everybody knows no country in this world is suffering as much as Ukraine. But at some point, you cannot ask for more, but you must present. And the perception that I sometimes have, or like also other people in Germany have, is that in Ukraine, it's always like, give me the grant, but leave me alone. And this is something that doesn't work. You spoke about partnership, and partnership means giving things up. I remember I was at a conference in Luxembourg, and she was a young girl, but she was rather sad about our business model because she said, oh, Alex, you just want to make a profit with my country, and my country will be sold out. And I didn't really know what to answer then. No, I'm looking for a partnership, for a win-win situation, but win-win means I also need a win. And our German investors need a win. And it means sharing the win and not just taking. And this is like a mindset and mentality shift that only the Ukrainians can do. And the quicker you adapt, not just here, of course, a school could be a donation project to be rebuilt, but at some point the free money is over. And with regards to social impact bonds, I don't really know that well how it works because I'm pure privately investment focused. But even a school, if you present it as some kind of a profitable case, the chances of rebuilding it quick, is higher than say, give me the money and go away. This is like my take on this little bit of change that the Ukrainians, in my view, should do. It's a mindset shift, and the quicker you do it, the quicker the rebuilding will go.
Дуже вам дякую, що ви такі чесні.
Thank you so much for being so honest with us, because we also have to become honest. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with our Ukrainian partners and foreign partners. So I see that Boris may want to add it. Alex, thank you so much. Alex,
Дуже велика помилка.
it's a common error. Because, well, we start to look like a constant consumers. I always told you, you don't need to give us anything. We are partners. We can generate money. We're just making a mistake because impact economy is not about donations. It's not about charity. I have a few very quick examples. I think I'm also an impact investor of sorts. And it's a good example of Ukrainian impact funding. And you know, first time in my life, I received the perfect definition of what impact funding is. I was one of the first investors of a well-known Ukrainian project called Promprilat Renovations in Ivano-Frankivsk. It's one of the best examples of Ukrainian common success because it's a case where we bring together for the sake of something, not against something. And the story was pretty interesting. As part of this project, investors expect around 6 to 7% per own capital. And by the way, the market value was around 12 to 14. So the difference between these two numbers is my impact contribution. Difference between market value and what I got. The money are still mine. I expect further project capitalization. Oh no, Ukrainian businesses, for example, may invest in a very interesting project, air defense, and it's not about weapon, it's about private military bonds, which were issued by a well-known Ukrainian military veteran, head of Finstream company. These are military obligations, and the business receives 6% per annum interest rate, and this money I used only for funding veteran businesses only. So veteran may get non-market rate 8 to 9% per annum in hryvnia interest rate to build their own businesses. So impact economy, impact funding does not mean just free money. It means making money. But it will maybe different from the market. It's a difference between your impact, something you create in the area, and the maximum market rate. So I think it would be good to share these examples and to raise awareness about them. And getting back to what Alex said, I've heard it many times that in Ukraine the attitude to foreign partners is often, well, we're a bit spoiled by wartime grants and uncontrolled free money, and sometimes we're really poor with management. It's not happens in 100% of cases, but well, I'm not talking about Mercy Corp. I'm talking in general, that such cases are there. So, I already said it at the beginning. I believe that the best model is where we have investor, we have business who understands how to manage this money and understands responsibility for this money. And we have a community or state public institution which is basically the target of impact. You know, I talk a lot with businesses and with donors because I'm a head of supervisory board at Zaporizhia National University. It's about reform supported by World Bank, corporate management reform at university. We established a supervisory board, and currently this is a key body responsible for strategy. We hire rectors, pro-rectors, etc. And right now we're implementing a lot of projects of cooperation between our university and businesses or donors. So basically we can engage students, engage doctorate students and professors to such economic contracts. Thank you so much. I'm not talking on behalf of Mercy Corp as a whole because I'm not a country director, but I'm a person who has worked with grants for dozens of years. Right now we're looking for different ways to use grants and other donor funds in blended financing and other opportunities. And you know, I really wish that us Ukrainians talk about good cases where grants are used positively, as we talk about them as loud as we criticize. This outrage in mass media, well, I really don't mean it. I'm sincerely grateful to you, Said, regardless of what's said in the media. I appreciate you, Said, for supporting some of our projects in frontline areas in Kryvyi Rih, in Zaporizhia, and helping us to relocate one of the companies to the Kiev region. And in 2022, 2023, 2024, unless they received that money in time, we would really lose a big part of business would be lost. So there are a lot of positive cases. I just mean that sometimes we may be bad at managing these funds. It's such a very broad definition. I really want us to have some practical recommendations. This efficiency, this monitoring, this accountability, this communication, that's what Alex mentioned, when we need to communicate this partnership. How our partnership is going to be beneficial. I don't remember the exact date, but I know that donors in our legislation were changed, the term donor was changed to implementation partner, because it's really more appropriate to reflect the nature of these relationships. And Boris, thank you so much for raising these topics. Thank you so much for being honest about it, because our partners, our foreign partners, really need to know that we recognize that, yes, sometimes there are problems. And this is some of the lessons we are willing to admit, to work on them, and everyone who works in this ecosystem is engaged, so we avoid this victim role. we don't become beggars, we don't act as in really infantile partners. So I think that the best projects are based on co-funding principles, where grant is only a part of the funding arrangement. Because, well, you need to invest into this lottery ticket. It's about distribution of risks. You know, I was once told, you said position. If you say that we're doing a project, only if we receive your funding, most likely you won't receive this funding. But if you say that we will definitely implement this project, well, this additional funding will really increase our capacity, will make us more competitive and decrease the risks, it's a good opportunity. It means that you have a really good chance to get this money, not the vice versa. And by the way, very good experience. Those grant organizations that are present in Ukraine and are really know the context really well, because the better you know the context, the in a better position you will be to use the funding to address the issue. Alina, please jump into this passionate conversation. Friendly but really passionate. Well, it just means that we care, right? Yeah, okay, we're about to finalize. Let's try to connect some dots. What Alex mentioned, Alexander, about how to reach Ukrainians and how to learn to build these partner relationships. I think we really need to showcase successful cases. I absolutely agree with Boris. We really need to show that these cases are there. We should have a menu of our capacities, something we can show to the world. I personally believe that we need to focus on not just on our capacities, but on our existing cases. I think we under-communicate, and it's something I would probably focus. It's my takeaway from this panel discussion. We under-communicate. Probably it's partially because of our culture code, because I'm talking about Voznesensk case or Kalush case. Well, we're always ashamed to talk about our success. Well, we'll see how it works, the case is not yet over, not all KPIs are met. When we talk about social housing, when we talk about pilot projects, and a lot has been done. We have Kohat model. This project was launched less than a month ago, and people are living there, and people are already paying for stay. It's an amazing, high-quality social housing. There is not an Soviet building, definitely not an old Soviet building, and it's an amazing case. But once again, we are under-communicating this case because this case was just launched. Let's wait for another year or two. Let's collect some more outcome data. So my takeaway, well, I really appreciate this takeaway. It's an important takeaway. We need to communicate more. Even after a year or more, we will communicate our failures, not just success, because it always works. It's also important. We need to communicate both success and failure. Let me mention Voznesensk again, because we work with Voznesensk organizations, Petros, veterans and civilians. It was already mentioned by a very good case, one of Frankivsk has many cases of impact businesses. So I think it's something unique. Because, well, what city in Ukraine is most associated with impact businesses? Clearly, it's Frankivsk. They definitely will be top. So together with veteran civilians, with Petros and Voznesensk, we are like Mercy Corps, we are supporting these reskilling hubs for veterans and their family members. Or other people in Voznesensk, we want to teach them to become Olympic bow instructors. And when I'm telling it to people, all are skeptical. Come on, Olympic bow, Voznesensk, Frankivsk. But I will just briefly tell you how how they emerged with this idea. Katerina, silver medal holder, IDP from Kharkiv, initiated it in Frankivsk. And then, when they started to open these reskilling schools in Frankivsk, we approached them and asked them whether they are ready to replicate this Frankivsk experience in frontline regions. So it's actually a good example, very positive example. I think we can already showcase it. So the mayor's office employed one of such veterans. It's a big success. And I think it's one of the cases where we all present in this room can make our takeaway. How to properly communicate, how to look for these platforms, to talk about what's already done, projects already implemented, and projects we're doing right now, and also talk about futures, this menu of opportunities. Right now we're building these key statements from our panels. I think a menu of opportunities is good. Cohort is building high quality housing and other important takeaways we discussed. So I would probably now give floor to our audience. Maybe you have some questions or reflections about what you've just heard too, because the era, the alarm is over while you're thinking. Do we have someone willing to share or ask a question? No? Okay, we do. Wait, I will approach you with a microphone so everyone can hear you. Boris, I have a question for you. I'm a veteran myself. Right now I'm recovering my business, and you mentioned loans for development. Lower than 36 per annum offered by the bank. Is it actually realistic? And can I expect to receive this support? Thank you. It's an important personal question, but it may be also interesting for other people. I don't represent a financial institution, so it's difficult to answer it comprehensively. But it's done by Finstream Associations, Association of... I actually suggest you contact them. I will share with you contact data. But it's basically a reverse side of the lack of information. Today there are a lot of funding programs for veterans. Yes, there is some bank compliance, but once again, I'm pretty sure you've heard about your own business grant, 1.5 million, 579 loans, and a lot of other opportunities. So it's just another challenge, lack of information about multiple financial and grant opportunities specifically aimed to support veteran businesses. I will share with you some phone numbers later. And I will also share with you some phone numbers. We had Ocean Bank joining our previous panel, and yesterday we visited their hub. They opened on Podil district. They opened a business hub, Spaska 27/14, I guess. So they opened. I see our colleagues from our yesterday event here, and they had a chance to talk with a representative of Ashat Bank. This hub is designed to bring together entrepreneurs so they can discuss loan opportunities. So I encourage you to contact them. I can give you their contacts. And when we were wrapping up the event yesterday, we had the chance to talk about Ashat Bank representatives. So now they are looking for veterans to build collaborations. So I really encourage you to visit this hub, and I can share contact details. We have a question or reflection? It's more like a reflection. Hello everyone, my name is Andrei. I'm a founder and co-founder of a network of rehab centers. Stand up, okay. Let me stand up. I will show you a Sume brand. So a short reflection. I think that if we don't like something, we need to ask questions to ourselves. What did we do to correct it? Recently, with our colleagues, 6 months ago, we visited Berlin, Zanave Clinic in Kremen, Charité Clinic office. Maybe you've heard this name. And when after a week of training we wanted to come home, the German doctors were really surprised. When they asked them how much time would it take for you to travel, and we said several days, and they asked for why so long? Why do you use a train? But it's much faster to use a plane. So they are fully out of context and understand that it's our problem because we don't let people keep people aware about our global situation. So we really need to build these communications. And as for looking for partners for impact businesses, I think we need to look for communities where it's clear that the current government is a political dead man. If person doesn't think about next elections, they are brave enough to implement changes, because you know how it happens. The history is written by minority. Our people don't have education, don't financial education, and everything which is about future rather than bringing quick benefit here and now are considered to be some kind of provocation or fishy. So we really need to think about future. It's really good that we have these legislative changes, but we need to adjust them. Just my own example, frontline area, Oshad Bank program for frontline areas, very low interest rate loans, amazing. I think I already dealt with loans, I can use them. I go to bank and say, I want to use these loan programs for frontline areas. Kiev refuses me, very high risks, you're a frontline area. Basically, that's it from me. Thank you so much. And I agree with everything also by our today's panelists.
Boris and you, Alex, I fully agree with you. Thank you for your highly informative contributions. As to Ms. Alina, I was watching her, and I saw that she was very emotionally engaged and very enthusiastic. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Today, we talk about reality. We are very open and sincere. I think that's because we trust each other. We managed to establish the rapport. We know about many rejections by Oshad Bank, for instance, but there are other examples, successful examples. Try again, just try again. Why aren't you talking about success stories? No, we managed. Unfortunately, the speaker is not using the mic. You know, it's really difficult. We should not walk using the crunches. Yes, it's not a good idea, but let's provide the feedback. Unfortunately, the speaker is not using the mic. Well done. You're a role model for everyone. As regards the officials and authorities, you know, I was twice a civil servant. And once you are going to become a civil servant, I would recommend you something. First, ask your maybe friends or relatives, maybe thus you will understand what this work means. It's fully result-oriented. When the new broom comes, they manage to change no more than 15% of the existing system. That's the statistics. But the more enthusiastic people enter the civil service or local self-governments, the more they are engaged in some practical activities. Because, you know, in Ukraine, we are often focused on training, on learning, but it is also important to start doing something. I hope we will have the inspiration and the energy. We don't know when the war is going to be over. But as Alexander has said, we know that the nations will be over at some point of time. Usually during the first 2 years of crisis, the country may expect donations, but then it's time for early recovery, and it's accompanied by totally different mechanisms. In our context, the early recovery starts with the rare territories, and the early recovery should go hand in hand with the economic development. That's why it's really important to inform all the players that the frontline territories can also expect early recovery. And there might be grants which do not involve co-funding. But there are also other models, other schemes where both partners participate in the project. So I wish all of us to draw conclusions after this panel. Let's try and apply these practical recommendations in our projects. I wish all of us a nice rest of the day, nice rest of meetup. A round of applause for our speakers. In fact, we have some time for final comments for the remarks, if you are willing. But be brief, please. Okay, Alexander, I have understood you that we need to build something new instead of Hrushchevkas. Okay, what else?
Maybe indeed one last thing, because we were talking about communication a lot, right? And obviously, if it's impact, if it's finance, if it's anything, everything is emotional, everything is communication, everything is marketing. And the marketing of Ukraine, I don't see the solution now, but I can tell you the challenge from my point of view. Obviously, Ukraine needs to display to the world that it's a country in a war. The issue with this is, in order to get like not just grants for impact, but like the government needs all kinds of support when it comes to weaponry and winning this war. The issue with this is, obviously, I don't know how many attack nights I've experienced, 20, I think. And at the next morning at 8 o'clock, life is normal again. And you wouldn't believe it, I get goosebumps. I live on Khreshchatyk at 8 o'clock in the morning after such a night, traffic jam, and everybody goes to work. This is something we don't see in Germany. We only see front lines, destruction, Marinka, Mariupol, Avdiivka, and people in Germany think it's Berlin 1945 in Kiev, which is simply not right. Of course, I went to Lukyanivka. This is a full disaster. But I also went to, last December, Vinica, Cherkasy, Rivne, Lutsk, Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk. I see construction going on everywhere. I see normal life, and believe it, in this room, I see normal people. Ukraine is a normal country. It's a normal investment country. It's a normal investment climate, of course, with a very unnormal situation on top. But apart from that, people are so afraid. The German AHK delegation, they make like constant delegation trips to Kiev, fully booked out, and a week before, 50% cancellation rate. Because then at the end of the day, when it comes close to the border, people will not go because it's such an unnormal country. When I go to Ukraine, people think I'm crazy. And we are sitting here in a conference hotel. It is a very hard communication challenge, on the one hand, to display that you are a country under severe attack, and at the same time, normal people living a normal life for normal investments.
And ready to make projects together, right?
Exactly. This is, I don't have a solution, but this is like the challenge where Ukraine needs a marketing reframing in terms of communication. How do I display Ukraine to the world? As a suffering country in war, or as a country which is a normal investment case? This is like something that you have to figure out how to do it.
Це наше з вами спільне завдання.
Yes, this is our common objective, right? We have to increase our communication. Yes, in terms of PPP, I fully agree that we have something to display, especially our frontline communities. We have, for instance, a sub-project together with the School of Public Administration. It's about crisis management, and there were some projects such as underground schools. Then this project involved also cybersecurity and so on. I think it will be really interesting for our partners from the Eastern Europe. And we have already received some requests for partnerships from Germany in particular. Very briefly, yes, the PPP is often very painful and complicated, but it's worth doing. I think we have to keep in mind Ukraine looks very heterogeneous today. There are different conditions, different funding models for different territories, in particular frontline territories. But in some parts of Ukraine, it is possible to implement the certain models that will underpin the PPPs. Thank you very much, and I was asked to inform you that the lunch will be served in the second floor. And as Alina has said, please don't be idle and just try and try again.